really not to, go in and try and examine all the stuff in your house, but it's to make the recording potentially available. And again, I'm still working on trying to figure out how to zip these files so that they can be shared in a more efficient way. Because as it is right now, when they send me these recordings, they are huge. They're way too big for most normal kind of internet traffic, to be honest with you. So the bottom line is that I'm working on that. One of my big goals before next time is to figure out how and if I can post these on YouTube. I've been working on YouTube today and trying to figure out exactly how to post them. And that way it'd be easier, actually, because you could go and you could find them on YouTube. And then they'll be more easily accessible to you. So just because we're, it's a good time to get started. Let me just, gab a little bit about stuff that's going on. I hope everybody is healthy and safe. I still, I'm probably being overly optimistic, but I have a good feeling about Tucson, and I sort of have a good feeling about the western part of the United States, because we saw what happened back east when people didn't isolate, and of course it's been horrible back in New York, New Jersey, New Orleans, some of these East Coast cities that were the first cities to get the virus. They didn't really know it, and then places like New York, where people are just packed together, and a lot of people ride the subway, and the subway is already nasty, dirty. Then you add the virus into it. It makes for an easy way to catch the virus. So anyway, when those back east cities started to experience big problems, a lot of western cities, and I'm happy to say Tucson is in this group, but Seattle, San Francisco, Phoenix, Tucson, and other cities, I'm sure. I'm just not that worldly, but we started thinking about quarantining and wearing gloves and staying at home more and canceling big events that could be places where things would be spread. I mean, imagine how much that virus must have spread when it was spreading around in Mardi Gras in New Orleans. There's no doubt that the big problems New Orleans has right now is directly related to them partying too much. And they decided, and that was when the virus was out there, people were asymptomatic, etc. Well, anyway, to go back to my optimistic view, I feel like in Tucson, we're doing a pretty good job of isolating. I have to go out. I have no choice. I have to, for example, I have to help take care of my elderly mother, and she is in isolation because she has cardiovascular problems. And so we don't want her to be exposed to anybody. I'm the only person that goes anywhere near her, and I'm always gloved and all that. But the bottom line is I don't have any choice but to going out. But I do see big efforts in the city of Tucson to socially distance people. I mean, that means lines at Trader Joe's and potentially lines at Walmart. It means spaces, they've got tape on the floor in the Circle K, so you're 6 feet apart. You've got Purex right inside the door of the Circle K. So anyway, it's hard to know whether that big effect will mean that we don't have a huge medical disaster like they're having in some East Coast cities because of our ability, unfortunately, to see how bad things got there, and it scared us, and we started self-isolating. So we'll see. I mean, I feel optimistic about it, but I don't want to pretend that I really know anything about it. It's just purely a hypothesis that we got early start on isolation that made us maybe do a little bit better. I noticed that, of course, it was sad when they canceled graduation, but nobody's going to want to go to graduation I've gone to graduation for the last 23 years straight, and there's 1 million people there. So it's certainly not a safe place to be under these conditions. But they have scheduled, from what I understand, a virtual graduation on Facebook where they're hoping people will get dressed up and graduate anyway. And I absolutely plan to attend that. I would not want to miss a graduation. So anyway, so that's good news. Another piece of good news, sort of, is, well, it's good news, bad news, right? Here's the good news. D2L is up to date with everything that I have graded and recorded so far. But I got to admit to you, I have a long line of things that still need to be graded. And I mean things like Easter's End and quizzes and all that. And it's much more time consuming to grade them, because I have to open an email, have to acknowledge the email, I have to do the grading, in some cases print out the document so I can read it. So between now and Monday, I'm going to be attacking a lot of that stuff and recording it. So you should see updated grades on D2L by Monday. Okay. But you know what? The bottom line is that this class is usually an opportunity to get a good grade. And if you are participating, you're here meeting with class, you're asking questions, you're taking the quizzes, you know, I'm going to be hard pressed to not make sure that everybody gets a reasonably good grade in here. If I see that you are participating, you're here in class, you're doing your best job, and I usually like to give away a lot of good grades, and under these conditions, I'm going to be especially flexible. So anyway, so D2L grades, and again, if you sent me something like a Easter's End or some other document, don't stress out. You will hear back from me. I will send you an email back that tells you that I have looked at it, and you're going to see a bunch of that over the next few days, because I really end up working a lot Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I will have the opportunity to attack all that stuff that needs to be individually dealt with on email, and I will then be posting those grades. Okay, so don't stress out about it. You will hear back from me, because I will send you an email that says, you know, could be really short, that says thanks, got it, and you'll know that I have it, and I will be addressing a lot of that grading stuff over the weekend. Okay, so don't stress out about it. And again, if you owe me anything, you can turn it in. Okay, please. I said this the other day. I'm going to be very liberal. If you were in class, so you got quiz number 2, then I'm happy to take it right now. And remember that the maximum penalty I ever apply is 25% penalty. So you definitely want every point you can get so you can get your A in this class and escape from Bio 105. Okay. So anyway, just some general commentary. You know, I can't resist saying it. A musician that I admire so much. I've listened to him my whole life. His name is John Prine, and he's you know, won a lot of awards and everything, but that doesn't make much difference to me. I've listened to him since I was a teenager, and he died yesterday from the COVID-19 virus, and it was very sad for me to hear it. Now, I have to be honest with you and tell you, he was 73 years old and had a compromised respiratory system, so it's not as if he you know, was a young, healthy person, but nevertheless, it was really sad for me to hear about his demise. And again, if you ever get a chance, check this guy out. His name is John Prine, Prine. Anyway, I am presenting, I am recording. So let's do this. I want to go I'm going to just jump away for a minute and get myself a little bit better set up. I need a PowerPoint that I've got ready for today's class. I have posted this PowerPoint already. Come on, computer. This PowerPoint is document 007. It's called Ecosystem Ecology PowerPoint. And so here I am. I've got it right here. Okay. And let me go back. So we've got kind of a split screen. And, you know, even though I'm broadcasting from home, that doesn't prevent me from wearing a Hawaiian shirt every day. I feel like my students might be upset if I didn't wear a Hawaiian shirt. That's essential for me. Okay. So, bottom line is that tonight I'd like to do a lot of work. I've got a long PowerPoint that we'll look at. I might not be able to get all the way through it. There's a lot of stuff in it, a lot of cool stuff in it. Yeah, so I'm going to work on that. Then absolutely, we're going to stop.
Excuse me, Mr. Mackey. This is Pablo.
Hi, Pablo.
I just had a question. Was the title of the PowerPoint the coronavirus? What, the one with the coronavirus title on it?
Let me show it to you. It's this one, Coronavirus Lectures 4. And it is posted on my PIMA as document. Can you see this highlighting? As document 007, Ecosystem Ecology.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
I'm looking for it right now.
Yeah, it's document 007, unless I screwed up and I didn't post it, but I think it's there. Remember, it's in the handouts and posts.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it up there.
Okay, well, let me look then. Hold on.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it in that section.
Okay, hold on. I am going to be very careful. I don't want to lose this meeting, but let me go and check. It's not impossible, by the way, that I elected to post it. Thought I had posted it, but no. Okay, what happened there? I'm actually going right there right now to the best of my ability. And yeah, no, there it is. It's right there, 007, Ecosystem Ecology. So are you looking on my PIMA in the, on our class drive and in the folder called handouts and posts?
Give me 1 second. Mr. Mackey, this is the interpreter.
Sure.
I'm a second behind you.
Sorry.
No, you're okay. Okay. He said he found it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I was disappointed in myself. I thought, really? Did I forget to post that? But anyway, it is document number 007, and it includes this. This is one of the pages in it. The actual title of it is written up here, 007 Ecosystem Ecology. Okay, and it's saved. It's on there, and then you just verified that, so that's great. And I was actually happy that I could go and I could check to make sure it was there, and it wasn't a big deal. So thanks. I'm always worried about that kind of stuff. So actually, yes, this is the first page in it, and today's April 8th, 2020. This is the fourth lecture that I've given in the coronavirus lectures. The very first one, you remember, was when was the very first one? It was the 6th. No, I'm sorry. It was the 30th. So we had the 30th, the 1st, the 6th, and the 8th. All right. So I also, just for the record, I posted quiz number 7, and it's posted as document number 006. So it's right above this PowerPoint. Quiz number 7 is due Monday before class. Quiz number 7, the entire quiz number 7 is about why is Tucson a desert? Okay. And so, as I said, I'm going to hopefully clear a bunch of my emails this weekend, and this weekend and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then be able to start working on that on Monday. And so the quiz 7 is due Monday before class. All right. So actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the quiz that was due today was quiz 11 on climate stuff, right? Am I right about that? Yeah, climate 1. And then you would think we would go to quiz 12, but we're not, because I actually already had the quiz written up as quiz number 7 that dealt with why is Tucson a desert and the causes of deserts and all that stuff, which was posted in my last PowerPoint posting. Okay, so sorry, I'm going to do this again. Could have kept that one live, huh? Sorry, I apologize for my slowness here, but not entirely me. I think my bandwidth at home and my computer at home, it is nowhere near as good as my computer at Pima College. But of course, I can't get to my computer at Pima College. I am not allowed to go on campus any more than anybody else is allowed to go on campus. So, so that's right. Document number 002 is Climate Science 1, and I generated quiz number 11 from it. Climate Science 2, why is Tucson a desert? I know it sounds strange, but that's quiz number 7, okay? And then if you keep scrolling on down, you're gonna see PowerPoint. You're gonna see the quiz 11, which was due today on climate. And then right below that, quiz 7 is the quiz on why is Tucson a desert. Then right below that is the PowerPoint that I'm working on right now. And then and there we go. I'm just going to reduce this page and keep it live. Yeah, fine. Okay. Good. Sorry. Thanks for being patient with me. Let's get that PowerPoint.
I have a question.
Sure.
So for you're saying quiz 11 was due today, but when I open it, it says quiz 10. So is quiz 11 another one, or is it just showing?
I don't know. Let me look right now. That's possibly another screw up on my part. Okay, so I'm going up to quiz 11. Where is it?
Okay.
It's the one that says due 4/8.
Yeah, so it was quiz. So I did quiz 11, but it says quiz 10 on it, and I sent you it as quiz 10, not 11.
Okay, and that's fine. I'm opening it up. Well,
Okay.
I guess it's maybe not going to let me open it up. But so what you're telling me is it says quiz 10 instead of quiz 11. Sorry.
Yeah, the actual on the drive it
document.
says quiz 11, but when you open it, it says quiz 10.
Okay, that's a mistake on my part, and I'll do my best to. Well, it's too late to correct it right now. Quiz number 10 was actually the quiz about plate tectonics, which is sitting waiting to be graded. Then quiz 11 is the one about climate, hot air rising, cold air falling, all that kind of stuff. Then, as crazy as it sounds, we jump back to quiz number 7, which was already written and ready to go, that dealt with why is Tucson a desert? Okay, and then the next document that I'm going to post after today is going to be document number 008, which is going to be quiz 12, and quiz 12 is going to deal with ecosystems and biogeochemical cycles. Okay, stuff that we're going to talk about today. So I apologize to everybody. Let me chat that up so it becomes part of the official record. Okay, so
So I have a question. Quiz number 8 and 9 is due today.
gosh, when was quiz 8 and 9 due? I thought the quiz that was due today was quiz 11. Okay. But I apologize. Let me go back and
No, it's okay.
double check all this. So actually, looking at my notes. Yeah, it's true that whatever happened to I've got some notes up here right in front of me, and so I know quiz 11 went out on Monday and it was due. Monday was quiz number 10. Quiz number 8 was the Cadillac Desert quiz. So here's the thing. I apologize. I need to get my notes up here better organized. It's much easier when people just drop that stuff on my desk. But let's consider this, that what we've got out there floating around, make some notes here, is we've got quiz number 7 went out on quiz number 7. Hold on. We're going to get this organized. Quiz number 7 went out on April 6th. Quiz number 11 went out on April 6th. Okay. So both of those. Quiz 11 is climate. Is climate. Quiz 7 is deserts. Quiz 9. Hold on, unfortunately, I've got this stuff loaded up. I apologize, people. Let me get better organized here. Quiz 7, quiz 10. My computer is not working right. So I'm having trouble opening some documents, but I'm going to get to it. I'm pretty sure if I... Okay. Trying to download this document. It was number 10, actually. And the way my computer is, it's really not wanting me to... It's not wanting to let me open that document. So I'm going to just put it on the desktop. I'm going to take a look at it there. Okay. Sorry if you're trying to get in right now. Just hang in there, okay? Where is what I just dropped here? Okay, so quiz number 10 was plate tectonics. Okay. And the plate tectonics quiz, that's quiz number 10, was due on Monday, 4/6. Okay. So what I'm actually still trying to do is figure out exactly what quiz 9 is. And believe me, I will be able to do it.
I know what quiz 9 was, and I think that was due like last week.
Yep.
That was the
Right
water.
now, what I want to know is what quiz 9 was about. And the only way I can know that right now is by checking my grade sheet, which of course I'm not going to check my grade sheet.
Mister, it's the water one.
Water issues.
Oh, right, water issues. Thank you. Okay, good. And that one was due over spring break, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was due a little while ago, I think. Or I think you made it due like when we first started doing these classes. You gave us like a couple days to do it, but I think it was due last week.
All right, so let's just say that was technically due 4:30, right? That was the first day we came back. Okay, so thank you. I really appreciate it. But let's get this stuff all printed up. We've got quiz 7, da da da. Okay. Okay. So thank you so much for all this. The first one on the list was quiz 9, which was technically due, let's just say Monday the 30th, right? I think it was due, gosh, I don't know. But let's say that it was technically due,
So would it be considered late if I turned it in today? Because I thought it was due today.
Nah, no problem. Okay. Quiz 9 due 4/1. Tab. Quiz 10 due 4/6. Okay. You get all of this formalized here. Okay. Quiz quiz 10. Quiz 11 was due today. Quiz, oh, I know which one. Quiz 7. Okay. So quiz 8, which was the Cadillac Desert quiz. Let me stick it in there somewhere. Oh, I apologize that you have to see me work through this way, but I want to get things to be as clear as possible. I don't want anybody freaking out, okay? So then quiz 8, that was the video quiz. That requires you to watch that video. I'm just going to make it do, I'm just going to give a date and make it, I mean, many people have already turned this one in, but let's just make it do 4/13 again. Okay, so that we've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 hasn't come out yet. You haven't even seen quiz 12 yet. Quiz 12 is going to be due 4/15.
You already upload that quiz 12?
No, I didn't. No, I'm not going to upload it until Monday.
Okay.
I am overwhelmed by grading right now, so I don't want to. I mean, believe me, there's people that I upload something and they get it back to me in an hour. Okay. I apologize. It's taken me so long to do this. All right. So look, seems to me as if this has summarized all that stuff. I apologize. I need to keep. I mean, I'm just not keeping track of this as well as I need to. So. Okay, so can everybody see this? Can anybody see it?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, sorry, you know, if somebody was trying to get in during that entire time and I couldn't see it, so hopefully they'll try again. All right, so back to here. Okay. You know, again, if we start talking about a document and you don't see that document, please let me know. Now, can I say this just as a general principle? If because of my screw up, and I totally am willing to accept the blame here, because of my screw up with dates and stuff, you missed a due date, don't stress out about that. Just get me that quiz as quickly as you can, okay? And I don't mean you got to get it to me by tonight or anything. Just get the quiz to me as quickly as you can, okay? I'm not going to take any points off right now. It is too crazy and too complicated. So, you know, any of this stuff, I am totally, absolutely happy to take it. And I'm not penalizing anybody any points for it. All right. Does everybody understand that? You know, if you didn't turn in a quiz according to this official due date, don't stress out about it at all. Just finish the quiz and get it to me as soon as you can. Okay. Believe me, it's because of the way we're doing this and because of the kind of quizzes that I give, it is complicated for me to process some of this stuff. And so believe me, you could probably turn it in 3 days late and I wouldn't even know because I'm still processing all the paperwork from a few days before. Okay. All right. Like I said, I apologize. You had to let me look at this, but I'm happy people ask questions because this stuff was just out there floating around. Okay. And I'm happy now that we have a better picture of when all of these things are due. And now these are going to represent, you know, most of the points for the rest of the semester. I mean, there's that home ecosystem lab. That's going to represent a chunk of points. And we'll talk about the home ecosystem lab stuff later today. All right. I'm going to keep my eye on the clock because we want to take our break at 7 so people can go out and hopefully look up into the northwest sky and see the space shuttle or the International Space Station, not the space shuttle, the International Space Station going by. All right. Again, if there's any confusion about anything, please activate your mic and ask me a question. I know we can't raise our hands, but I definitely want to answer every question that I can. And hopefully most of them I can answer. Okay. Now, these changes that I made here are not in the PowerPoint that's posted on my Pima. But as soon as we are done tonight, I will repost this PowerPoint with these updated things, okay? Just so you have them as a record. All right, so the big topic for tonight, though, is ecosystems. And when it comes to ecosystems, I just want to sort of put it in perspective here that when it comes to ecosystems, we have spent a little time talking about ecosystem level stuff, but we moved toward it when we were talking about climate and we talked about biomes and I mentioned ecosystems. So, you know, in general, an ecosystem, I've defined it already before and said, look, an ecosystem is a pretty big event on the planet Earth. Like we are in the Sonoran Desert ecosystem, one of the desert biomes. And so Ecosystems are pretty big things. And I said an ecosystem is where ecological communities interact with physical factors of the earth, geography, climate, etc. So it's pretty darn big. The thing above that was bigger was the biosphere itself. Okay, that's what's bigger. Now, of course, I'm talking about Biosphere 1, the biosphere of the entire planet. But I decided to incorporate into this PowerPoint some information about Biosphere 2, and I thought you might find interesting and is certainly pertinent to our discussion of ecosystem structure and function. So, what I'm talking about, of course, is Biosphere 2, the biosphere that's a distance away from Tucson. I mean, I don't know. I guess the last time I went to the biosphere, it must have taken me about an hour to get there because of traffic and everything else. But if you get on Oracle Road and go all the way up and head toward the town of Oracle, you will see a big sign that says Biosphere 2. So what was Biosphere 2 about? Well, 8 scientists spent 2 years in an artificial environment known as Biosphere 2. I remember this so well. I lived here in Tucson at that time. And what was their ultimate goals? Well, their ultimate goal was to demonstrate that survival in an artificial, self-sustaining habitat is possible, and to gain a better understanding of the complex interactions on Earth so we can make better decisions. They called it the biosphere because they were literally studying how the entire ecology of the planet works. It was really, really ambitious. And so, you know, they built this giant terrarium, stainless steel and glass. They took a look at the biomes of the planet, and they thought, we need to put an ocean in here. We need to put a tropical rainforest in here. We need to put a grassland in here. We need to put a desert in here. And they started trying to build those individual ecosystems inside this giant terrarium. And so when it says down at the bottom, did they meet their goals? Well, I'll tell you that they eventually ended the experiment because they were having trouble controlling all the huge number of factors that were inside the biosphere. Did they accomplish goal number 2? Yeah, they did. They gained a better understanding of how the biosphere works and how ecosystems interact with each other. And at the time, it was crystal clear that there were multiple things going on. One thing was, look, could we build something that could be transported to another planet so we could live on another planet in a sort of little miniature Earth inside this terrarium we built? That was one thing they were interested in. But they were also absolutely interested in putting these 8 scientists in an artificial biosphere and seeing what the heck happened. Well, again, the biosphere has a really nice website, and you could check it out. But bottom line is that they did learn a lot in that about the biosphere and about ecosystems. So one thing they learned is that survival in an artificial self-sustaining habitat is very complex, and we have a lot to learn. And then they extrapolated that to Earth and thought, well, the interactions on Earth are more complex than what's going on in here. But here is some of the information that was in the textbook that I picked up. It just happened to be Miller's environmental biology textbook. I know we don't have a textbook. 4 men, 4 women, 3,000 plants and animals were inside for 2 years and 20 minutes. About 1/3 of the organisms inside became extinct, including most of the vertebrates. Vertebrate includes things like, you know, mice and anything that has a backbone. So fish and mice and things like that, animals, as we sometimes call them, and all the pollinating insects went extinct, and that meant plants couldn't get pollinated. There were big-time plant diseases, and a certain kind of plant called a morning glory vine, it started growing everywhere. And it outcompeted other plants and killed them. I think you're not going to be surprised to hear this, that cockroaches did great in there because cockroaches are really adapted to survive under unusual conditions. They had to grow their own food and eat it. And that sounds like maybe it wouldn't be a big deal, but imagine you were sealed inside of the biosphere with some food to get you by, but you basically had to start growing the food that you were going to eat. And one thing they ate again and again and again were sweet potatoes, and they ate so much sweet potatoes they turned a little bit orange. And this is serious. Oxygen supplies became dangerously low. They dropped to about 14%. The human body is not designed to work under this kind of oxygen concentration. Whoops, sorry. Under this kind of oxygen concentration. Does anybody know, just off the top of their head, what the oxygen concentration of the planet Earth atmosphere is now? Today, right now, the air you're breathing?
42.
I'm sorry, what?
I don't actually know. I just guessed 42.
Good guess. 42 is a big time answer. It's 21%. So the air that we breathe is 21% oxygen. That's the air we're normally breathing. So this, decreased by 1/3, and it was life-threatening. Now, kind of makes you think, well, where do we get oxygen from? Who makes oxygen? And of course, the answer is plants make oxygen. And many of the plants inside the biosphere were really challenged to grow right. And they had plant diseases that spread pretty well, and they were outcompeted by other things. I mean, I've been to the biosphere recently. I think the last time I was in the biosphere was last summer, and it looked pretty nice inside. They still have problems, like in the ocean there, they have so much algae that it just about chokes the ocean off. But their tropical rainforest looks really good, and it's been a while since they sealed it up again. There's oxygen moving into it now, so the low oxygen concentration. But remember, they sealed these people in. And as crazy as this sounds, I knew people who were so interested in this that they snuck up there and snuck in so they could look through the biosphere and look through the windows in the biosphere and see what was going on in there. It was kind of like an early reality TV show. You mean nowadays they should do that exact same thing and do it sort of like Big Brother and put people in a self-sustaining Earth-like habitat and see how long those people get along. So we did learn a lot from it. All right, so now let's start talking about ecosystems. At 6:43, remember we want to take our break at 7 o'clock. When we think of, go ahead.
Did they have like beds and stuff, or like a?
Oh yeah, yeah. They had all the normal stuff. I mean, the place is huge, and they had their own rooms and offices and all that kind of stuff, for sure. What they did not, they had a certain amount of food to help them get by until enough food grew. They had a lot of trouble growing food. It was not as easy as you think it might be, especially growing enough food for everybody in it. Collectively, they lost lots of weight. And then the one thing that did grow pretty well, and they were able to eat and eat meat, was sweet potatoes. And I like sweet potatoes, but I don't know if that's if I would want to eat sweet potatoes every day.
Yeah.
Anyway, good question, thanks. So let's talk about, we're working our way up to understanding more about ecosystems. Organisms and their habitats form complex systems. There's sort of 4 components of the Earth. There's what's called the lithosphere, and litho means rock. So down here, nice picture of rock. There's the atmosphere, right? That layer of gases that most of it, 95% of it, is around is within 10 kilometers of the Earth's surface. It's thicker in the equators, it's thinner at the poles. There's the hydrosphere, and I think everybody knows hydro means water. And so really any kind of watery thing that you might think of, oceans, lakes, etc., is part of the hydrosphere. And then the last thing, of course, is organisms that are part of the big 4 components. Now, when we start to talk about ecosystems overall, I'm going to talk about energy flow through ecosystems and matter cyclings in ecosystems. And really, when you talk about energy movement and matter cycling, you always think, well, how are those things passing through all of these four components of the Earth? The biosphere of the planet is made up of living things, the atmosphere, the lithosphere, which means the crust of the Earth, etc., and the hydrosphere. So you already know that we have a hierarchical system of classification. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time talking about it, but we've talked about some of this stuff before. Like down here, we've got an individual organism. Here, we've got an ecological population, group of individuals of the same species living and interacting in the same region. When you combine populations, you get a community, all the ecological populations in an area. When you move up to the ecosystem level, now you are adding in the lithosphere, hydrosphere, and atmosphere. You're adding in the non-living stuff. So where it says here, a specific portion of a biome consisting of the living, that is biotic, and non-living abiotic environment components that interact together. Then you take all the ecosystems, combine them into a sort of grand group of ecosystems called biomes, and then all of those add together to form the biosphere. Again, this is not new information to you. Maybe you remember I actually started talking about this and I started with the atom, okay? I started talking with the atoms and I worked my way all the way up to the biosphere. So first there's organisms, those individual living things. A population, a group of organisms, all of the same type. Community is a group of organisms, not all of the same type. An ecosystem is all those organisms in the ecological community interacting with the other ecological communities and with the physical environment at a specific place. Again, a biome, which is not a term I use a lot, is a major category of ecosystem like desert, grassland, tropical rainforest. I mean, the biome that we live in is a desert biome, and the specific ecosystem is the Sonoran Desert ecosystem. So the Sonoran Desert, just for the work, is at the ecosystem level. A tropical rainforest is at the ecosystem level. And I don't really want to worry too much about this, okay? Again, biomes, I showed you a different kind of graphic the other day that looked a little bit like this. Do you remember what it showed? It showed that temperature and precipitation create these different ecological conditions where we find biomes. Notice that all the deserts of the planet, all the deserts of the planet are in this band. Notice they're all in a band that's really dry. Deserts are dry, right? It's interesting because a desert is sort of defined as a place where there's not much available water. So it's not surprising to me that they're in a line here on the left side. Gosh, really not sure why the cursor just wants to misbehave. Here's all the deserts. Now, actually, there's parts of the planet called tundra that are really, really dry too, because water is generally frozen there, and you're very unlikely to find any liquid water. And maybe humans could chop some ice up and melt it, but most organisms are not going to be able to do that. So, bottom line is that a tropical rainforest, notice, is where it's, you know, relatively warm and it is pretty wet. Wet and warm is where you're going to find tropical rainforests. Okay. So, as I said, I'm going to kind of boom through these different biomes: Mediterranean scrub, tundra, desert, tropical rainforest, etc. In the biosphere too, there was several biomes. There was a desert, there was a rainforest, there's an ocean, there's a savanna. Here's where they did a ton of agriculture just to feed themselves. And then over here, this part was where they had their bedrooms, etc., and their offices. This was all connected together. You couldn't leave it. Be interesting stuff. The only thing I want to look at up here in the top is this definition. Ecology is the scientific study of ecosystem structure and function. So what's the difference between an ecologist and an environmentalist? I think that's something that's worth at least thinking about. An ecologist is a type of scientist who probably, though not necessarily, has some kind of degree in the study of ecology. But believe me, there are some amateur ecologists out there that are much smarter than me. And even though I have a degree in ecology and evolutionary biology, believe me, there's plenty of people that are a lot smarter than me and know a lot more about ecology than I do. An environmentalist, I tend to think, is someone who loves the ecology of the planet, loves it. I mean, and is interested in it and wants to interact with it and wants to defend it and protect it. Does not have to be a scientist. I mean, you can be an environmentalist and simply say, look, I'm an environmentalist. I really like deserts. I'm going to live in a desert. I'm going to spend time in the desert. I'm going to study, try and understand the deserts. I'm going to do my best to protect a desert. So when it comes to talking about ecosystems, one thing you have to have in order for an ecosystem to exist is some kind of energy source. I mean, it takes energy to keep things alive. It takes energy to make an ecosystem function. And like it says here, usually for 99% of the ecosystems on the planet, it is usually sunlight that powers that ecosystem. Now, you know what? There are ecosystems that exist in caves, for example, where there is no light, and obviously the energy source in that case has to be something different. It could be the energy source comes from roots that literally hang inside of a cave. I've seen that. It could be that water flows through a cave and carries sources of energy into the cave that way. But a basic ecosystem requires some kind of energy source, and that energy source is usually sunlight. The second part of the structure of ecosystems has to do with the physical environment, the non-living thing like water, air, minerals, etc. Now, of course, organisms are built into this ecosystem automatically. So one kind of organism that we find in ecosystem is an organism called a producer. Producers are able to do photosynthesis. When they do photosynthesis, they take carbon dioxide gas, they take water, they need energy, usually in the form of sunlight, and they do photosynthesis and they do something amazing. They are able to make their own food. A plant can make a sugar like this sugar, glucose, and then use that sugar as its own food. Now, when plants do photosynthesis, this is an amazing reaction, really. They take a waste gas that they generate and that other organisms generate, and then they take water and they take the energy from the sun and they produce sugar of some kind. This is a very simple sugar called glucose, and oxygen. Oxygen. Well, again, this is why we should hug a plant every day, because plants produce oxygen that we need in order to live. We also, as organisms, we also need, come on, cursor. I just said I don't know. Here's my cursor out here. Where is it now? Okay, there we go. We need food, which we can, of course, get from plants. Some can. And we need oxygen to break the food down. So this is why I said it really should consider hugging a plant every day. Maybe not a cactus, but some kind of plant, and thank it for being part of a system that produces food for you and oxygen for you. Because it actually turns out that if you're going to break this food down and get energy out of it, the energy you need to run your body, you need oxygen, you need energy source, and you will do another process called cellular respiration that is produces the energy you need to survive. Now, next level up is consumers. Consumers eat other living things, right? Primary consumers, sometimes called herbivores, they only eat producers, so they only eat plants. Primary consumers are plant eaters or herbivores, and to be a primary consumer, that's all you're going to eat. Secondary consumers eat primary consumers, and believe me, we're going to look at some food webs and food chains and that kind of stuff sooner or later, but most people, I think you know this stuff already just from having listened to me talk before. Oh, there's another group, important part of the ecosystem called decomposers. Decomposers eat dead, decaying organic material. So they can eat the waste. This is one of those dung beetles that's pushing a nice round ball of dung around. Eventually, it will push it into a safe place and lay eggs in it so that its larvae can feed on it. I mean, here's a millipede that eats dead organic matter. Decomposers are hugely important. I mean, I kind of feel like if we didn't have decomposers that eat waste matter and dead living things, the world would look radically different. There'd be dead stuff all over the place. So here are two super important ecosystem processes. And I need to talk about both of these because part of my goal is to help you understand how ecosystems work, why they are the way they are, how big they are, what they look like, etc. So here's the two processes. One is the one-way flow of energy, and we'll talk about that later. Energy is a hugely important process. Again, like I've already said, just so I don't keep you in the dark, the energy that allows the ecosystems, the biosphere of the planet to work the way it does, almost every bit of it comes from the sun. So here's this little sun, not a big extraordinary sun. It's 93 million miles away from us. It throws energy out in all directions, but some of it, a tiny, tiny fraction of it, passes 93 million miles through space and crashes into the Earth and powers the entire ecosystem of the planet. Amazing. The second one, the one we're going to talk about in more detail today, is matter cycling. When you matter, as I've told you before, can be very immortal. Like we talked about a biogeochemical cycle already called the hydrological cycle. We talked about it when we were thinking about water issues in Tucson, right? So this is called matter cycling, and I'll remind you that matter means atoms and molecules. In a biogeochemical cycle, nutrients move from the environment to organisms and back and forth and back and forth. People know these molecules. H2O, everybody knows this, water. CO2, another, maybe the second most famous gas, right? Oxygen is maybe more famous, but CO2, very famous gas. Now, this one is actually it is the formula for a kind of nucleic acid, okay? RNA, I think, okay? But notice hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, sulfur. This is a molecule, super important molecule that has 6 different elements in it. Okay? The 6 major elements in living things: carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, phosphorus, nitrogen, and sulfur. And here's my favorite acronym for this: SPONGE. Sulfur, phosphorus, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, and hydrogen. You know, I can't resist. This reminds me of those sponge cookies. One of my favorite cookies, buy them in Food City. They're called sponge cookies. and their delicious cookie. Look, can we take our break now at 7 o'clock? I think it would be good if we could take our break now. And then if you have the opportunity and if you have the desire, then go outside and take a look at, maybe you will get a chance to see the space station flying by. Okay? And so we're on an official 10-minute break, 7 o'clock to 7:10, okay?
And yeah, this is Pablo. I just wanted to say, look to the northwest specifically.
Look to the northwest. Okay, here we go. We're on an official 10-minute break. All right, I'm back. I'm sorry to report that I couldn't see the space station because of the clouds.
I couldn't
Sorry,
either.
because- I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I couldn't either.
Well, I mean, I think it would be easier to see if it was dark out, right? Because it would reflect, right? And then it would also be easier to see if there weren't so many clouds.
What were they doing? I really didn't even know what I was looking for, to be honest.
Oh, well, what Pablo told us was that he had read that at about 7:05 we could be able to see the space shuttle, not the space shuttle, sorry, the International Space Station moving through the sky. It probably would look a little bit like a shooting star or something like that, but truth is that you would have to be in a darker place to see it, and of course it did not help at all that that there were clouds out there too. So I appreciate the heads up about it, but I'm sorry that we couldn't get a chance to see it. So anyway, I'm back and ready to work, and I want to ask first, of course, if there's any questions on any of the material that we've covered so far. This PowerPoint is posted now, but the most up-to-date version of it that includes the information about quizzes is not posted. But I promise as soon as we're done with class tonight, I will post it. I was thinking about trying to go until maybe midnight tonight, if we could, and get just a ton covered so that we wouldn't have to meet again tomorrow. I'm only kidding. I think we're going to be over about 8 o'clock like we usually are. All right, so any questions? I'm just going to boom on back about any of this stuff. Because what we are talking about is the structure of ecosystems. And right now we're really starting to talk about biogeochemical cycling, which is the movement of atoms and molecules through the biosphere. And we've talked a little bit about it already, because one biogeochemical cycle that we looked at was the hydrological cycle. So we'll repeat a little bit about that. So for what it's worth, here's kind of a big picture of the biosphere. And one big process that happens is energy from the sun passes through the biosphere, and it ultimately leaves the biosphere as heat. It's kind of a one-way thing. Oh, it may bounce around a little bit when it's in here. It certainly will. And create heat in the environment that ultimately radiates out into space. Energy goes right through ecosystems. Now, elements like carbon, phosphorus, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur, water, these things bounce around and stay inside the biosphere. They don't leave the biosphere and leave the planet. Oh, I'm sure that there is a small amount of these elements that come into the biosphere from space. I mean, they come in as meteors, meteorites, comets, that kind of stuff. But as far as stuff leaving the Earth, I don't think it does. I think when matter like this, you know, atoms like this, when they are in the biosphere, they are recycled and recycled and recycled inside the biosphere. So when we talk about matter recycling in ecosystems, we think about where the matter is. Is it in the lithosphere? Is it in the rocks of the Earth? Is it in the hydrosphere? Is it in the oceans? Is it in the atmosphere? Is it up here? I mean, you know, one of the most common places to find, I mean, the reservoir for carbon dioxide is our atmosphere. And then it is also possible for elements to be found in organisms. I mean, for example, there is a lot of carbon in the plants of the planet Earth. I mean, these big forests have huge amounts of carbon stored inside of them. I don't think it rivals the amount of carbon that's up in the atmosphere, But the carbon dioxide and biomass here, plants and soils and those kinds of things are certainly an important place where we could find some of these things. When we think about biogeochemical cycles, and again, this bio means organisms, geo means lithosphere, chemical means hydrogen atmosphere. And we think, well, where is most of this element found? That's when we use this word reservoir. So there are lots of biogeochemical cycles. I'm positive that there's, got to be 20, 25 biogeochemical cycles that are important to organisms. These are just a few. The hydrological cycle is one we've talked about a little bit already. We'll talk briefly about it, but we'll get to talk about the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, phosphorus cycle as part of this PowerPoint. So the hydrological cycle or the water cycle, we don't need to spend much time here, do we? We've talked about the hydrological cycle already. Remember these words: evaporation, transpiration, transportation, precipitation, condensation, infiltration. So basically, water is an immortal molecule. Now, what it's worth, there are events inside of living things that break water apart and put water together. But in essence, most of the water on the planet is an immortal molecule, and all it does is it just cycles and cycles and cycles. It ends up in the ocean, it evaporates, it gets transported until it hits a rain shadow effect. It goes up this mountain, now it falls back down, it goes in the river, goes back to the ocean. Nice cycle. Now, here is a much more interesting cycle. Not that the hydrological cycle isn't interesting, but the carbon cycle, this is a really interesting cycle. Carbon, of course, is a super important element for living things. Our bodies are built of chains of carbon. So when you look at the molecules that form a body like ours, carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleotides, nucleic acids, those things, they are built around a backbone of carbon. So there are sources of carbon, reservoirs for carbon in the atmosphere. You bet. Then there are reservoirs of carbon in living things, and there are reservoirs of carbon in rocks and throughout soils. There's lots of carbon on the planet in different places. Now, one of the most common events, one we've talked a little bit, is where carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is turned into sugars by plants through photosynthesis. What do those plants do with the sugars they get? They do two things. They use those sugars for energy because they are energy storage molecules. When a plant makes sugar using carbon dioxide and water and sunlight, it is storing solar energy in that sugar. When you eat sugar, the energy that comes out that runs your body was originally solar energy. So photosynthesis is one way that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere can end up in plants. So one thing they do is they use it for energy. The second thing they use it to is build their bodies. Plants' bodies are mostly made of carbohydrates. So when plants build their bodies, they build them mostly out of carbohydrates. When animals build their bodies, they build their bodies mostly out of proteins. Now, plants have plenty of proteins, and there's carbon in proteins. Now, what happens to a plant that has energy stored in it? Well, it gets eaten by other organisms, and the energy is extracted and used. The plant itself uses some of that energy to run the plant, but then the plant, puts leaves and mulch, etc., down on the ground, which is rich in carbon too. And ultimately, that does end up becoming part of the soil, the sort of humus or detritus portion of soil. And decomposers will help to decompose that stuff. Now, what can happen, just for the record, is an ecosystem can become fossilized. And when it becomes fossilized, it ends up deep underground, under pressure, under heat, and it can actually become a fossilized ecosystem. And when it does, it forms what we like to call a fossil fuel. And fossil fuels are densely packed with carbon. They are really densely packed with carbon and energy. Now, of course, those fossil fuels could stay underground all the time, but they don't. We depend on oil and gas to run our economy. And so we pump it out, we distill it and separate it. Some of what we do ends up being gasoline we put in our car. And when, of course, we drive our car, that fossil fuel is broken back down into carbon dioxide and water. So the reaction that happens in the engine of our car is adding carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. You can burn down a forest, and that will also add carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So carbon dioxide enters organisms, it's used by organisms. Some of it gets returned back to the atmosphere as organisms die and are decomposed or they burn. Like this, unfortunately, reminds me of those big fires they had in Australia a few months ago that burned huge amounts of forests and added huge amounts of carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. I mean, if you burn part of a tropical rainforest in the Amazon, one of the effects of that is you are going to add a lot of carbon to the atmosphere. And of course, there's lots of good evidence to suggest when you add carbon to the atmosphere now, it changes our climate by increasing greenhouse effect and increasing the average temperature of our atmosphere. And there's really a scientific consensus about that. Very few people will disagree. Oh, there's people with political leanings that will disagree with that. Like if you're a big fossil fuel company, you would rather not continuously remind people that when they burn your fossil fuels, they are adding to global warming. Okay, so the carbon cycle kind of answered. You can kind of create an outline here and think, okay, what happens with the atmosphere? How does carbon get in? How does carbon get out? Well, carbon can get into the atmosphere by burning living things, and it goes back in the atmosphere. Carbon can get back into the atmosphere because it's extracted as very concentrated carbon in oil and gas, and then we run our cars and we add carbon back to the atmosphere. Decay in soils adds carbon to the atmosphere. How does carbon get out of the atmosphere? Well, the number one way it gets out is through photosynthesis. So plants absorb the carbon dioxide, they use it to do photosynthesis, they store the carbon in a solid form inside their bodies, which organisms can eat, and that's a source of carbon in the biosphere. You know, organisms, where does carbon dioxide go in? Where does it go out? The hydrosphere, where does it go in? Where does it go out? The lithosphere, where does it go in? Where does it go out? All those answers are right here. I don't think we need to go through each of these, but think about it. When we're dealing with the carbon cycle, where is carbon found? Where is it found? How does it move around? What is a reservoir for it, and what is a way that it leaves that reservoir? So, real quick, carbon cycle. How does it get into the atmosphere? By respiration, by combustion, by volcanoes, burning fossil fuels, etc. How does it get out? it gets out of the atmosphere by photosynthesis or potentially by dissolving in the ocean. And of course, there's lots of creatures in the ocean that will do photosynthesis too. In organisms, how does it go into organisms? By photosynthesis, right? When plants store it, and by feeding when organisms eat on plants. How does it get out? Well, it gets out of organisms because they do cellular respiration, where they liberate carbon dioxide. You burn biofuels and you release carbon dioxide. Decomposition, the breakdown of carbon molecules by decomposers, is also a way for carbon to enter the atmosphere. Okay. In the hydrosphere, carbon can dissolve in water as carbon dioxide. How does it get out of the dissolved water in the hydrosphere? It gets taken up by organisms. There are organisms in the ocean that need carbon dioxide in order to build shells. But then there are also photosynthetic organisms that will do photosynthesis using carbon. So how does carbon get into the lithosphere? By things that don't decompose. They ultimately form rocks and fossil fuels. How does it get out of the lithosphere? Well, by combustion, burning those fossil fuels. Volcanoes can liquefy the lithosphere and release carbon dioxide. And then rocks of the planet can be weathered and broken down. And those carbon-containing rocks end up as part of soils. And that's how they're leaving the lithosphere and becoming part of a soil. You know, soil itself is a kind of ecosystem where we see the overlap of organisms and organic matter and abiotic things like elements and gravel and minerals and those kinds of things. Any questions about the carbon cycle? Quiz number, I'm just thinking about quizzes now. And quiz number 12, which is the next quiz, that quiz is going to be about the parts of this PowerPoint that we have covered. So it's going to deal with ecosystem structure, and it's going to deal with biogeochemical cycles. And as part of that, I will ask you to take biogeochemical cycle that you find interesting and explain it to me in detail. Now, of course, you could use this PowerPoint as a reference, but I think you know this. My quizzes are all open note, open book. Before we came online today, I was on YouTube looking at some biogeochemical cycle videos, and there are lots of them that as they go and they explain, there's a lot to be learned about biogeochemical cycles. Let's take a look at the nitrogen cycle next. You know, nitrogen is super important. It's needed by all living things to make biological molecules like proteins and DNA. I mean, we animals build our bodies out of proteins. We make our DNA. When we make proteins or make DNA, we need this atom called nitrogen. So this nitrogen cycle, super important. Again, when we think about nitrogen cycle, we can sort of track it out this way. You know, most of the nitrogen on the planet is in our atmosphere. Okay, let me write this down. Oh, thanks. There was a question by Andrea said, is there going to be a quiz on this PowerPoint? And as far as I know, it's going to be quiz number 12. I don't think I've screwed that up. And quiz 12, I will make it available to you on Monday morning, and I will, and I'll expect it back by Wednesday. But again, don't stress yourself out too much. If you've got lots of stuff on your plate and you want to hand it in to me a little bit late, that is not a problem. Believe me, just like I've got more on my plate right now than I can handle. But here's what I wanted to just write down here in the chat. Okay, air equals 21% oxygen and 78% nitrogen equals 99% of air. What about that 1%? Well, there's lots of gases in that 1%, but one of the major gases in it is carbon dioxide. So there it is. Air is 21% oxygen, 78% nitrogen, 21 and 78 adds to 99%. What about that 1% that's left? Well, carbon dioxide is one part. We'll talk about atmospheric gases in the future for sure. Okay, what happened to my PowerPoint? There it is. So nitrogen, the major reservoir in it is in our atmosphere. So how does it get out of our atmosphere? Well, one way, just to mention it, is when lightning passes through the atmosphere, believe it or not, it can actually create some nitrogen molecules that fall out in rain and go into soils. It's not impossible. But I think that most of the time when nitrogen comes out of the atmosphere and it goes into soils, it happens because of what is called nitrogen fixing bacteria. Nitrogen fixation is where microbes, that's bacteria, convert atmospheric nitrogen to ammonia, ammonia and other nitrogen molecules. So ammonia is one of those molecules that once it's produced, nitrates, nitrites, ammonia, it goes in the soil. Now it's in nitrogen in the soil, and that means now it's in the soil, that nitrogen is available for plants to pick up and use to build their bodies. Now, when they build their bodies, some leaves, etc., will fall back and go back in the soil, and it'll just be a cycle like this. But of course, plants are taking nitrogen and putting it into their leaves and stems and roots. And here comes a little bunny over here. And this bunny is munching on this plant. It uses the nitrogen that it extracted from this plant, and then it produces waste products, right? Bunny poop that goes out and becomes part of the soil again. So nitrogen from the atmosphere ends up in the soil. It goes through plants. It goes through plants and goes through animals. It ends up back in the soil. One part of the nitrogen cycle. But, you know, it's a cycle. We kind of want to know, well, can it get back into the atmosphere? And the answer absolutely is it can get back in the atmosphere. And most of the time, when it gets back in the atmosphere, it gets back because of another kind of bacteria down here that are called denitrifying bacteria. Here's the word, denitrification. And guess what they do? They convert soil nitrogen, dead bodies, etc., and they release nitrogen gas back in the atmosphere. Bacteria release nitrogen gas back into the atmosphere. Bacteria take a different kind of bacterium takes nitrogen gas out of the atmosphere and puts it back in the soil. Whoops. And it cycles and cycles and cycles. So, a quick summary about that again. When you do nitrogen fixation, you take atmospheric nitrogen. Remember, 78% of the atmosphere is nitrogen. Bacteria convert it into a form that plants can use. The plants are eaten by animals. The animals are eaten by animals. They die. They produce wastes. Those wastes have nitrogen in them. That can be broken down by decomposers, and that nitrogen can be denitrified and put back in the atmosphere. You know, there's a famous nitrogen-containing molecule. It's called, whoops, Max, sorry. There's a famous nitrogen-containing substance. It's called urea. Urea is actually named after urine, because it is the main toxin released in urine. When urea is released into the environment, bacteria break it down and release it. The nitrogen as ammonia. I gotta say, if you never realized that there was a link between, oh, what happened to that? Oh, it's down here. So urea is named after urine, and it is a toxin that we need to get rid of out of our bodies. And denitrifying bacteria, among other kinds of bacteria, will break it down and release ammonia. And what I was about to say is that if you never realized there was a link between nitrogen and between urine and ammonia, then I'm guessing you never had a litter box with lots of cats peeing in it. And if you didn't change the litter boxes pretty often, it would stink of urine. Okay, you know, the phosphorus cycle is one that I'm just going to let you study it. All right, I'm not going to spend any time talking about it. Phosphorus is also super important. It's found in important molecules like DNA and RNA and those kinds of things. It's super important in all living things. There's really no phosphorus in the atmosphere. Phosphorus is found first in rocks. I think the major reservoir for phosphorus is rocks that slowly get weathered. They end up in soil, and then they get absorbed by plants and passed on to animals, so we have access to it. So, nutrients like carbon, phosphorus, and nitrogen, they cycle through the ecosystem all the time. So, bottom line is in Biosphere 2, oxygen and carbon were off by such a great amount that scientists found themselves constantly exhausted. Low levels of oxygen, high levels of carbon dioxide. Oxygen levels had fallen to dangerously low levels, and that means they could not really extract the energy from the food they ate. They needed that oxygen. So the lessons that they learned from Biosphere 2 is that the Earth is far more complicated than we imagined or we could plan for. A tiny change can set off a sequence of events that can degrade a system's capacity to support life. Negative results can be just as informative as positive results. I mean, it was not a good thing that they ran out of oxygen. Of course, they got out of there safe, but then they had to look back and think, wow, what happened with the oxygen? Why weren't we getting enough oxygen? You absolutely gained a better understanding of carbon cycling and other biogeochemical cycling in the biosphere. And then the biosphere is still used by scientists around to study the effect of an atmosphere loaded with CO2 and other things. Right, so there's PowerPoint number 007. We're going to pick up and finish talking about ecosystem structure, energy, mostly the next time around. So, but that's plenty. Go back and watch that PowerPoint maybe 10 times or so, and you will enjoy it. If you have any questions, of course, email me with questions. But again, I got to say that there is so much cool stuff on YouTube about biogeochemical cycles. When you're working on the quiz about biogeochemical cycles and this material we covered today, don't forget to use great resources we have like that. Okay, the one other document that I want to get to right now before we end class is I would like to, okay, hold on. How many Googles do I have online? There we go, dynamite. I wanted to go here to labs again. So remember, this lab stuff is right there available for you online. So I don't know what happened there. It didn't want to open. I'm going to try it again. Actually, you know what? Maybe I don't. Nope, I don't need to open it. Sorry, I didn't mean to disappear there. Because I have it right here. It's big-ish. It's not huge, that lab manual, but I downloaded it before just in anticipation of crazy computer stuff like this right now. All right, I'm going to go all the way down to the beginning of the home ecosystem lab. Right, that's what we're thinking about right now. Water. Can I answer any questions people have about water data? Are people collecting water data? It would be good for you to collect water data on yourself for about a week so that we can, you can get a pretty clear picture. And again, I've got my gallon jug sitting right here, ready to go. A gallon jug is an extremely useful thing to have. Okay, where is it? Where did I lose it? Okay. I lost that document. How am I going to get to it? Right here. Okay, sorry. Oh. Okay, sorry. Here's my gallon jug again. I took the top off it, of course, so it'd be easier to measure water with. I hope everybody is working on this data set and collecting information about your personal water use. I mean, we want to know where you use the most water, how you use the most water, okay? So that later we can talk about ways to conserve water with the data in hand, okay? We did that the other day. Now, we talked the last time about energy. And first thing I said was go around your home and start doing an inventory of the major energy consuming appliances you have. So that includes things like, you know, your air conditioners, your evaporative cooler, a fan. It includes things like space heating. How do you heat? Maybe you have a furnace. I live in an old ranch house. It was the first house near Speedway and Alvernon because it was the ranch foreman's house and it has no centralized heating. Sometimes I use our oven as a heater. I carefully use our oven as a heater because the kitchen is right there in the middle of everything. And if I run the oven at temperature, it works as a heater. Entertainment. I know everybody's got entertainment stuff, cooking, of course. You're going to do an inventory here, and then you're going to identify, is this an electric device? Is this a gas device? Or is this a solar device? Okay. That is a piece of cake. You just wander around your house. Now, what I asked you to start doing the other day was doing this lighting analysis. And here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to go through your house. And again, we talked about this the other day, is make a list of the major lights in your house. You do not need to list every light in your house, right? You are listing the major lights in your house. You know, if there's a light in the garage that you turn on once every 3 weeks, then you don't need to list it. But you're going to name it porch light. And then in my case, I would put for light type, I would put LED. Watts would be, it's a 60 watt LED. So again, that's about 15 watts. And then hours per day, 24/7. So it's going to be porch light, LED, 15 watts, 24 hours per day. Then we're going to multiply the watts times the hours times 30. This is per day to get the kilowatt hours per month. We divide those by 1,000, and guess what? The cost to us is about 10 cents per kilowatt hour. Now, there's other data sheets here, but there's only one that I really want you to worry about, and it is this next one. And I don't really care. I mean, here's the thing. I don't want to think very much about incandescent bulbs. What I'd like you to do with this page, okay, I'd like you to do with this page is I'd like you to pretend for a minute that you convert every light in your house to LED lights, okay? Convert every light in your house. So you're going to go back to your original list, and you're going to go, okay, here's porch light. Here's how many watts it is as an LED. Here's how many hours per day. Here's the kilowatt hours, and here's the cost. Now, let's say that one of the lights you have in your kitchen is an incandescent bulb. Well, you're going to say, all right, what if I converted that incandescent bulb to an LED? Well, that incandescent bulb originally used 100 watts, but as an LED, it's only using 10 watts, okay? So you would change that to kitchen light number 1, 10 watts for 6 hours a day, and then carry that number over here, watts times hours times 30. That's because there's 30 days in a month. You're going to take that number, divide it by 1,000 to get the kilowatt hours per month and calculate out what it costs you. You'll pretend all of the lights in this case are converted to LED lights. And then we will be able to look and see what your original light story looked like, all the lights, and what would happen if you converted them all to LEDs. Now, I have to tell you, in my house, a lot of lights already are LEDs, and that might be your case too. And I don't want you to make up any data about that. I just want you to think, okay, what if I made sure that every light in my house was an LED? What would this chart and what would these numbers look like next, okay? So between now and the next time we meet, that's when I'd like you to start thinking about collecting that light data and converting that light data into a scenario where you pretend you convert every LED light, every light in your house into an LED light. Now, it is true, and I don't know if we want to get too worried about it now, since this is actually not going to be due until early May. But the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start looking at garbage we produce. And again, that means we're going to have to start collecting data on garbage production in our home. And, you know, I have to say it again, the gallon jug can be extremely useful in figuring out the volume of garbage that you make. I mean, you could, for example, figure out how many aluminum cans fit in the gallon jug. Since I cut the top off, I would have no trouble putting an aluminum can in here and sort of sitting it down. And it looks to me as if I could fit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 aluminum cans in a gallon. I mean, it was pretty easy, wasn't it? I took an aluminum can and I estimated how many I could fit in there. 10 aluminum cans occupies about a gallon, and it was very easy to get that data by using my official thing. You could figure out what the volume of a newspaper is. Again, how would you do it? Cut it up. Take a newspaper that you receive. If you do, cut it up into pieces small enough that you can pack it into, or you can drop it into your gallon jug, and you could go, all right, here's 7 days worth of newspaper. It adds up to 5 gallons. And who knows, it could. If you don't get the newspaper, then guess what? Your volume is going to be 0. Okay. Now, I want you to just think about this a little bit so I can answer questions about it the next time, okay? But right now, if you would be working on data collection about your use of water and your use of water, which we talked about, and then think about your energy appliances, and then think about this lighting analysis where you identify the major lights in your house and you calculate out essentially what it costs you to run those lights. And then here, even though it says incandescent light, I would like it as if we just decided, hey, we're going to pretend that we're converting every, too bad I can't convert this. It's a PDF, so I can't do conversion. And I guess I need to get a program that will help me open a PDF right now, but I don't have one. So you're going to say, okay, what if I took every bulb in my house and converted it to one of those LED bulbs? You know, just for what it's worth, those LED bulbs use a lot less energy, produce the same amount of light. They also produce a lot less heat. And that means you don't have to worry about the heat they might produce in your home, or you don't have to worry as much. I don't know about you, but if you took a standard Thomas Edison bulb and you let it run in a lamp for 10 minutes, you couldn't touch it because there's so much heat generated by it. But you can put an LED bulb in, and even after it's been running for a long time, no, that's a compact fluorescent bulb. Darn, I want to put an LED in there. And you could, let's say, LED right here. Look, this LED light has been on for hours, but look, it's not hot at all. So that lack of heat does all kinds of interesting things itself. LED lights, when we first saw LED lights like this, they were super expensive, but they're not now. I bought 4 LED bulbs at Home Depot the other day for $5. So $1.25 each bulb. Now that's more expensive than an incandescent bulb, but you know what? LED lights last forever, years. I mean, a typical LED light will run for years. Incandescent light bulbs burn out in 6 months approximately. So there's lots of good reasons to think about LED lights. Okay.
What about solar?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
What about solar? I don't use, I have solar panels for my whole entire house. So how would you like us to calculate that?
For you use solar panels to do all the electricity generation in your home? Is that true? So the solar panels provide all your electricity generation?
Yep, 100%.
Okay, well then, when you're filling out this chart here, you're going to add another line over here that says solar. And unless you use something else, like let's say you have an electric stove or a gas stove.
It's electric.
Electric.
Yeah,
So
I don't have any gas appliances. It's all electric.
What you're going to do then is you're going to put a line over here that says solar, and you're going to identify all the electrical consuming appliances in your home that, and only in your case, you're going to say, hey, every one of these isn't, it's electric appliance, but the overall source of the energy is solar. All right. So that's what you're going to report back is that, you know, in fact, what you could do, this would make it easier, is over here where it says electric, just put in here S for solar and say, look, all of these things are electricity generated by solar power. That's great. Imagine that. Your electric bill must be really low.
It is. Yeah.
That's great. Now,
If there
now the
isn't any
panels you have
clouds-
on your house, do you need to pay for those?
If there isn't any clouds, it's a pretty good bill. And yeah, we purchased the panels ourselves.
Oh, good. So you pre-purchased them and you're not paying for them anymore. You just spent all that money at once now to have cheap electricity forever.
Well, actually, we do still make monthly payments, but it really does. They're going down.
Very nice. So look, when everything, if everything falls apart, I'm going to come over to your house. Okay, because no matter what happens, you'll probably be able to have electricity even no matter what happens in society. And no, I'm only kidding. I don't know where you live, but I wish I had a solar paneled house. That would be great. Okay, so close all tabs. No, I better not do that. I don't want to drop out yet. Here I am. Wow. We're done as far as I'm concerned. Anybody have any questions? Is anybody still awake? I should look at people and see who's actually asleep now. But go back, review that PowerPoint. The quiz that I am going to provide for you on Monday, quiz 12, is about biogeochemical cycles and very basic ecosystem stuff. And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I have a question on that data collection. Like, if you have gas, like gas stove, do you list it as that or what?
Oh yeah, sure. The data sheet. Let's take a look. The data sheet has a place to put gas or electric. Okay. So if you have a gas stove, you have to go, well, okay, here's the thing. What do I use the gas stove for? Cooking, right? So you're going to list over here that you put here under this line, kitchen stove, kitchen oven, and over here you would put a check for gas. I've got most of my stuff is electric in this house, but I have a gas stove. So sure, there's a line for both electric, gas, and if you have some things that are powered by solar that are separate, then you could put solar out here. I mean, honestly, some people cook. I know people who cook in the solar oven, and that's certainly energy use in their home. So I would end up putting solar. I would down here where I've got the line for cooking, right? I would put outdoor oven, and then I would put over here solar. So it's not electric, it's not gas, it's solar. Carol, did that answer your question?
So you just put a check mark on the gas thingy on the gas line?
All you're doing is putting a check mark there. That's why I said
Okay.
It's pretty easy. You're just doing a little worksheet where you're identifying what your sources of energy are. Is the energy you're using electrical energy from the socket? Is it gas energy delivered to you by Southwest Gas or another gas company? Or is it exclusively solar? Because some people have solar water heating, and that provides their hot water. They don't use a standard water heater. They use a solar water heater on their roof. So you're just making a list of the energy consuming devices in your home.
And would propane be under gas?
Yes, it is. Propane is in gas. The natural gas that's delivered to our home is a mixture of gases, I think, including methane and propane and butane. It's got a bunch of different gases in it. All right. So everybody, stay safe, stay 6 feet apart, wash your hands many times a day, have wear gloves if you can, wear something to cover your mouth and nose out there if you can, and stay safe and stay away from the COVID-19 virus, okay? And I will see you Monday at 5:45 I'll be working a lot over the weekend on grading, and I will get grades posted in D2L, okay? Adios. I don't know what that means. I should have said peace.